2:10 a.m. Don't ask about my plans. No punctuation. No emoji. Just lowercase defiance. Like she was smirking when she typed it. She didn't know I was still awake. She didn't know I'd already seen the Uber receipt come through on the shared email. She didn't know I had audio recording running from the bedroom Amazon Echo since 11:38 p.m. But I knew. I knew enough. She said she was staying the night at Rena's because she was too drained to deal with my moods. But Rena texted me at 1:04 a.m., asking if I wanted updates on the movie marathon. Confused. Concerned. Rena's texts always come with smiley faces. This one didn't. So I waited. Didn't text back. Didn't call. Just stared at the ceiling and watched the fan blades carve the darkness into slices. Then her message hit at 2:10. I blinked. My jaw tensed. But I didn't reply. 7 minutes later. 18 missed calls. All from her. No voicemails. Just silence wrapped in desperation. By then, she was already outside the building. I know because I heard the front door buzzer scream once and stop. And then again. Longer this time. She never buzzes. She has a key. But she must have dropped it. Or lost it. Or given it to someone else. I didn't move. Didn't get out of bed. Didn't go to the window. Didn't want to see what car she came back in. Instead, I grabbed the backup phone from the drawer. The one she doesn't know exists. The one I set up last month when she started saying she needed space, and then spent 4 straight weekends out with old friends I wouldn't understand. She said that phrase exactly 3 times. Word for word. And every time she said it, she wore the same pair of earrings, small, silver hoops she never used to wear. The ones that matched nothing else she owned. I launched the tracking app one installed on her phone 2 weeks ago, after she left for a bookstore run and returned with smudged lipstick and a price tag still dangling off her bra. Her phone was pinging from the alley behind the building. Not moving. I refreshed the map. Still there. So I turned up the audio feed from the hallway camera, just in time to hear her pounding on the lobby glass. Crying. Crying. Suddenly, she was the one sobbing in the middle of the night. Suddenly, I was the monster for not opening the door. But she had sent the text. Don't ask about my plans. So I didn't. I just kept listening. And waited for the voice that would call her name from the darkness. I stayed in the dark. My phone was still buzzing with missed calls. 19 now. 21. Then the texts started coming. Please, I need to talk. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I'm not crazy. Just come downstairs. He left. That one. That one nearly made me throw my phone across the room. He left? She was in an alley at 2 in the morning, lying to me. And now some unnamed he had apparently been part of her plans. I finally got out of bed. Not to let her in, but to see. I moved to the window and looked down through the blinds. And there she was, barefoot, wearing the same gray sweater she wore when we went on our first road trip. It looked wrong on her now. Crooked, torn near the shoulder seam. Like it had been pulled too hard. Maybe in a rush. Maybe during something else. Her makeup was smeared. Not dramatic, just enough. Enough to suggest she'd cried. Or maybe someone else's hands had brushed her face. And in her left hand, she held her phone, waving it in my direction like a flag. A desperate, digital SOS. Then she looked up, straight at my window, as if she knew I was watching. She didn't wave, didn't cry louder. She just mouthed 2 words. Help me. I didn't move. Instead, I opened the app that synced the hallway cam and rewound it 15 minutes. And there it was. Not just her. A man. Tall, buzzed hair. Wearing what looked like a utility vest or a tech jacket. He wasn't affectionate with her. No. He shoved her. Hard. Into the brick wall near the dumpsters. Then he paced, yelled something I couldn't make out, and threw a paper bag onto the wet ground. And then he left. Didn't even run. Just walked away. She stayed curled up by the wall for a long time before finally crawling toward the lobby door. That's when the buzzing started. That's when she became my problem again. Except this time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to be the one to fix it. Not after the weeks of distance. Not after the lies. Not after she told me I was just another routine she needed to escape. I watched her slump to the concrete, her head resting on her knees. Then the motion light flickered behind her. Someone else stepped into the frame. Someone new. And this one wasn't walking away. I didn't blink. Not once. I just stood there, frozen, watching the new figure step into the alley's weak motion light like a scene from a dream you desperately hope isn't real. This person wasn't like the first guy. He moved differently. Slower. Not aggressive. He didn't say anything. At least not loud enough to be caught by the hallway mic. Just stood there, watching her, like he was waiting to see what she'd do next. And she didn't move either. She must have heard his footsteps, but she stayed curled up, still facing the door, still clinging to her phone like it was the last thing tying her to whatever life she thought she still had. I opened the camera audio feed wider. Still nothing. No words. Just the subtle sound of water dripping from a broken gutter overhead. That, and the faint buzzing of her phone as another message came through, probably to me. I didn't read it. Instead, I opened another app. The one I swore I'd never use unless I had absolutely no choice. It accessed the external street cam across from the alley. I installed it months ago after someone keyed my car. Back then, she said I was paranoid and obsessed with control. Now I felt like a man who had just discovered he was right all along. And it was the worst feeling in the world. The new camera angle gave me a clear view of the second man. He stood by the corner of the alley, maybe 10 feet from her. He wasn't watching her with concern. He wasn't trying to help. He was recording. I could see the soft glow of his phone pointed directly at her, arms half raised, the screen gently illuminating his face. He was smiling. That was the part that broke something in me. Not the cheating. Not the lying. Not even the other man. No, it was that a stranger saw my wife in a moment of pain and thought it was entertaining. And I hated that a small part of me agreed. I should have run down there. I should have opened the door and ended it. But I didn't. I just stood there, sick with a kind of paralysis that only comes when love, trust, and pity all crash into each other. She finally lifted her head, looked around, realized she wasn't alone. She said something. I couldn't make it out, and then stood up, stumbling slightly, clutching her side like she was sore. The man filming didn't budge, but her body language changed. Not fear. Recognition. She said something else. Louder. The mic picked up 3 muffled words this time, and it shattered the night like glass. She said, "I told you no." It was the tone in her voice that shook me. It wasn't angry, and it wasn't scared either. It was final, like someone repeating a boundary that's already been crossed too many times. I told you no. I heard it clearly on the mic now. Her voice cracked right after the word told, like she'd been yelling before, or crying, or both. The man with the phone lowered it slowly. Not because he was ashamed. He looked annoyed, like her refusal was just inconvenient. And then he turned his back to her and walked away without a word, slipping into the shadows toward the main road, his silhouette shrinking until the camera lost him behind a delivery truck. Soraya didn't chase him. She didn't scream. She just stood there, swaying slightly, wiping her face with the back of her hand. I watched her for almost 30 seconds before she finally turned toward the lobby door again. She raised her fist, but didn't knock this time. Instead, she leaned her forehead against the glass. Her whole body seemed to fold in on itself. That was the moment something shifted in me. Not forgiveness. Not sympathy. Just fatigue. I opened the door remotely from my phone. Didn't say a word. Just buzzed her in. She flinched like she wasn't expecting it, then stumbled inside, barefoot steps echoing down the hallway on the feed. I muted the mic. I didn't want to hear her breathing. I didn't want to hear her say my name. I didn't want to hear apologies that were coming way too late. She knocked lightly at the apartment door 5 minutes later. 3 taps. Soft. Like we were still in love. I didn't answer. I let her stand out there. I wanted her to feel the weight of silence for once. To wonder what I was thinking. To feel what I'd been feeling for months. Eventually, she used her key. Walked in without a word. Her eyes were red, hair messy, sweater soaked near the neckline. She looked like someone who had been dragged through hell, but part of me didn't trust the performance. She opened her mouth to speak, and I raised my hand. Not in anger, just a gesture to make it stop. Whatever she was about to say, I already knew it wouldn't be the truth. "I need you to just listen," she whispered, her voice shaking. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I was trying to end it tonight. That's why I... End what? I asked, keeping my tone calm. Flat. Her eyes darted to the floor. And that's when I knew. It wasn't just one guy. This wasn't a single betrayal. This was a second life unraveling. She sat on the edge of the couch like it was foreign to her. Like it belonged to someone else now. And maybe it did. Maybe the version of us that bought that couch, the couple that argued for 2 hours over fabric samples, died somewhere between the first lie and the 18th missed call. I didn't sit. I stood in the doorway of the kitchen, arms crossed, not even pretending to hide how hollow I felt. She kept looking at the floor like there was something there she didn't want me to see. Her hands trembled. That's when I noticed blood dried along the edge of her thumbnail. Tell me what happened, I said, not really wanting to hear it, but needing to measure what pieces she was still willing to leave out. She didn't start with the night. She started with a name. Kiernan, she whispered. It's been over for a while. But tonight, he showed up. I didn't know he still had my location. Kiernan, not a name I'd heard before. Not someone I knew from her work or her social media. Definitely not the guy who pushed her against the wall. He didn't look familiar either. So why did it feel like she was feeding me a name just believable enough to distract from the rest? And the guy in the alley? I asked. The one recording you? Was that him? She shook her head slowly. That was someone else. I don't know who. I think Kiernan sent him. It sounded rehearsed. Not the panic of someone in danger. The script of someone who'd been caught and needed to redirect the fire. I walked over to the table, opened my laptop, and clicked the recording files from earlier. The hallway feed. The alley angle. I paused on the frame of the first man, tall, square jaw, tattoo near his collarbone, and turned the screen toward her. That's not Kiernan, is it? Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Soraya, I said flatly. I need you to tell me how many people this involves. That's when something shifted in her eyes. The trembling stopped. The tearful energy dissolved into something colder, almost practical. 3, she said. There were 3. I ended it with all of them weeks ago. But tonight, one of them found me. He followed me from work. I tried to get away. That's why I sent the text. So the guy recording you in the alley was a friend of his? I asked. She didn't answer right away. Her silence was too long, too calculated. I could feel the heat rise in my chest, but I stayed quiet. I wanted her to keep talking, to bury herself further. I thought I could control it, she finally muttered. They weren't supposed to cross into our life. I had rules. Rules. Like cheating could be structured. Like she had a system for betrayal. I should have screamed. I should have thrown something. But instead, I asked the one question I knew she didn't want me to ask. Were they all at the same time? Her silence confirmed everything I feared. I didn't say anything for a long time after that. She just sat there, like she was waiting for me to fall apart or lash out or do something predictable. But I didn't. I couldn't even feel my hands anymore. I just stared at her. This person who somehow managed to turn our apartment into a crime scene without ever breaking a single object inside it. She tried again, softer this time. It wasn't supposed to be emotional. I didn't love them. I don't even like who I became when I was with them. I swear, I was ending everything. Tonight was supposed to be closure. Closure. That word made me laugh out loud. Quietly, bitterly, but enough to make her flinch. I had to get out of that room, even if just mentally. So I walked back to the kitchen, pretending I was going for water, but I pulled my laptop out again. The hallway footage was still open. But now I pulled something else, the smart speaker logs. A month ago, she left for a spa weekend, but I stayed home sick with the flu. She didn't know I'd heard her come in the next night around 3:30 a.m., barely making a sound, whispering to someone on the phone from the living room. I told myself not to think about it. That maybe I dreamt it. But I enabled speaker monitoring anyway and left it on. And now, with my heart racing and her sitting 20 feet away trying to rebuild something she'd burned down, I opened the log from last Saturday. The speaker had caught 38 minutes of audio between midnight and 1 a.m. The file was still on the drive. I clicked play. At first it was just soft music. Then the unmistakable sound of laughter. Male laughter. Hers too. And then his voice. Unmistakable now that I'd seen his face. Not Kiernan. The other one. The one from the alley. He said, "He really believes you still love him, huh?" And she said, "He doesn't ask anymore. That's how I know he's broken." The water glass slipped from my hand and hit the counter with a dull thud. She looked up, startled. "What is that?" she asked, noticing the speaker icon on the screen. I didn't answer. I was still listening, frozen in real time as the recording continued. Another line. Him again. "You're gonna have to choose eventually. You're not built for guilt." Then silence. A long silence, followed by her voice again, so soft, I almost wished I hadn't heard it. She said, "I already chose. He just hasn't noticed yet." I turned the laptop toward her. "Tell me," I said, "what exactly did you choose?" She stood up slowly, face pale now, all her practiced expressions falling away like a mask that cracked too fast. "I was scared," she whispered. "I didn't mean any of it. I just, I wanted to feel something. Anything. You've been so distant. I felt invisible in this house. You wanted to feel something? I asked, my voice shaking. So you gave pieces of yourself to 3 different men? I didn't give anything, she snapped suddenly, the softness gone. I took it back. Everything I gave up when I settled into this life. I was losing myself. That's when it hit me. She wasn't sorry. Not really. She was just angry that I finally saw her clearly. I closed the laptop, and I realized she wasn't the one who made the biggest mistake. I was. For not leaving the first time she came home with someone else's scent on her. The strange thing is, after everything she said, the apartment felt quieter than ever. Not heavy, not loud. Just numb. She paced behind me, repeating fragments of guilt, like a song stuck on loop. But I wasn't listening anymore. Not really. My mind was somewhere else. Somewhere quieter. Somewhere without her. She tried to stand in front of me, waving her hands like she was trying to physically pull me back into the argument. Eben, I told you the truth now. I could have kept lying. Doesn't that count for something? I turned toward her slowly. No. It just means the story finally ran out of road. I don't know what I expected. Tears. Rage. Begging. But she didn't do any of that. She just stared at me. Really stared. And then looked away, like even she didn't believe the apology she'd rehearsed all night. I stood up and went to the bedroom, pulled out the drawer she never checks. Inside was a folder I started 3 weeks ago, when her lies stopped being clever and started being sloppy. I had bank statements, screenshots, copies of texts, even a notarized lease agreement with my name only. I'd already signed. I just hadn't picked the date yet. She followed me into the room, eyes narrowing when she saw the papers. What is that? Clarity, I said, calmly, sliding the folder into my laptop bag. You made your choices. Now I'm making mine. She reached for my arm like some last-second reflex. Wait, you're just leaving? After all this? All what? I snapped, the dam finally cracking. After finding out you had a rotation? After being the background character in my own marriage? After you called me safe to a man who was filming you crying in an alley at 2 a.m.? She went quiet. And I think, for once, she didn't have a script ready. I thought you'd fight for this, she said eventually. I shook my head. I fought. You just never noticed because it didn't involve shouting. I stayed. I forgave. I believed. That was me fighting. I walked past her toward the door, and she didn't follow this time. Maybe she knew it was over. Or maybe she thought it was just another dramatic scene that I'd walk back from, like I always had. But this time was different. This time, I had already forwarded everything to my lawyer. I had already removed my name from the joint account. I had already booked the storage unit, the Airbnb, the new mailbox. I was done giving her power over the narrative. Because now it was mine. I didn't slam the door when I left. I didn't say some final cutting line. I just walked out. She didn't chase me. No dramatic goodbye. No tears in the hallway. It was quieter than I expected, almost peaceful. I took the stairs instead of the elevator, half hoping the motion would shake something loose in me. Regret. Rage. Anything. But it didn't. I just felt light. Not happy, not yet. But light. The Airbnb was small, a little cold, smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and someone else's life. But the bed was made. The silence wasn't tense. I sat on the edge of it and just breathed. Deeply. For what felt like the first time in months. I didn't check my phone. Not even once. I knew there were probably messages. Maybe missed calls. Maybe even long, unraveling paragraphs trying to rewrite the night into something gentler. But I didn't need any of it. I already knew what the story was. And more importantly, I knew how mine was going to continue without her. The next morning, I went for a walk. No destination. No plan. Just shoes on pavement and cold air in my lungs. I ended up near a tiny bookstore cafe. One of those cozy places with wobbly shelves and handwritten signs that say things like, "Don't be in a rush. Stories take time." I ordered a tea I didn't recognize. Sat by the window. Watched people pass by, unaware of how shattered my week had been. And for once, I didn't feel jealous of their peace. I felt ready to earn mine. I opened my laptop, not to check messages, not to read legal updates, but to start writing again. I used to write short stories before the marriage dulled that part of me. I told myself I was too tired, too distracted, too busy loving someone who couldn't return it the same way. But sitting there, in a chair that didn't belong to anyone but me, I typed a sentence. And then another. And I smiled. Not because everything was perfect, Not because I'd healed completely, but because I was finally back in a life where I didn't have to question whether love was real. Mine was. Hers wasn't. And that's no longer my burden to carry.